Can you imagine creating something so powerful it literally changes the course of the world? But you're so busy with your PhD, you just try to sell it off. And even crazier, nobody wants to buy it. Well, that is the unbelievable beginning of the Google story. This isn't just about a company. It's about a college project that accidentally became the operating system for all of human knowledge. And this number, this is where it all started. $1 million. That's all Larry Page and Sergey Brin were asking for back in 1998. They pitched their little project to the CEO of a big search engine at the time called Excite, and he flat out said no. Why? Because his own engineers thought the search results were actually too good. They sent people away from the site too fast. It might just be the single most expensive no in the history of business. So how in the world do you go from $1 million rejection to a $2 trillion empire? Well, we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll look at the simple billion-dollar question that managed to fix the early internet. Then we'll dive into the accidental business model that became a rocket ship. After that, we'll see how they built an unshakable information empire, explore the huge challenges that come with that kind of power, and finally, really get to grips with how a simple search box changed, well, everything.
Okay, to really get Google, you have to transport yourself back to the internet of the mid-90s. And if you weren't there, just picture a total digital Wild West. It was a chaotic, disorganized mess. Finding anything useful was next to impossible, all because the search engines at the time, they just weren't very good. They all shared a massive, fundamental flaw.
See, the problem was really simple. Old search engines just counted how many times a keyword appeared on a page. So if you wanted your site to rank for, say, Las Vegas, you would just write Las Vegas 100 times at the bottom of the page. It was so easy to game the system. But Larry Page had this breakthrough idea, and he got it from the world of academic papers. He thought, wait a minute, in science, the most important papers are the ones that get cited the most by other important papers. He realized a link on the web could work the same way. It isn't just a link, it's a vote. And that idea, that became PageRank. And yeah, the name is a pretty clever pun. It's about ranking web pages, and it's named after Larry Page. So what it does is, it doesn't just count the links, it weighs their quality. A link from, say, a major news website is worth way more than a link from some random personal blog. And the results? I mean, it was night and day. Suddenly, search actually worked. You won't believe what they first called the project. Back rub. Seriously. Because it analyzed the web's backlinks. They were running this whole thing out of a dorm room, using a jumble of borrowed hard drives from all over the Stanford campus. But pretty quickly, they landed on a much better name, Google. It's a play on the mathematical term Google. That's the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. It was a sign of just how massive their ambition really was, to organize a basically infinite amount of information.
Okay, so now they have this technology that is fundamentally better than anything else out there, but they had one tiny little problem. It made absolutely no money. I'm talking zero. For the first couple of years, Google had no revenue at all. They really hated the idea of ugly pop-up ads and cluttered websites that were so common back then. They needed a better way. But once they figured it out, wow, did things move fast. The whole thing started with a $100,000 check from an investor who was so excited he wrote it out to Google Incorporated, before the company was even officially a thing. But the real game changer was in 2000 with AdWords. Just 2 years after that, they were profitable. And by 2004, their IPO had them valued at a staggering $23 billion.
So what was so revolutionary about AdWords? Well, for one, it was just elegant. Instead of annoying banner ads, Google sold little text ads that were tied directly to what you were searching for. You search for new headphones, you see ads for new headphones. Makes sense, right? And here's the brilliant part. The ads that showed up first weren't just the ones who paid the most, they also had to be the most relevant. And because anyone could sign up online, a tiny local bookstore could now compete with a giant corporation. It was pure genius. So, with this absolute money printing machine up and running, Google could have just kicked back. But they were smart. They knew that just being a search engine was a weakness, so they started one of the most aggressive and frankly successful expansions in corporate history, with one goal in mind: to become totally essential to every part of your digital life. And their strategy was simple but brutal. They didn't just enter a new market, they completely upended it. I mean, when competitors were giving you a few megabytes of email storage, Gmail launched on April Fool's Day, offering a whole gigabyte. People literally thought it was a prank. Then they took satellite images and street-level photos, stitched them together into Google Maps, and made paper maps totally obsolete. And they just gave away a powerful Office suite for free with Google Docs. Then came the big money acquisitions.
In 2006, Google bought YouTube for $1.65 billion. At the time, everybody thought they were insane. They said Google massively overpaid for a site that had no revenue, insane bandwidth costs, and was facing all these copyright lawsuits. Well, today, YouTube brings in almost 20 times that purchase price in ad revenue every single year. But you want to know what might be the single most important deal they ever made? This one. Just a year before the YouTube deal, Google quietly spent just $50 million on a tiny startup called Android. The news barely even made a ripple, but it would turn out to be the checkmate move in the entire war for the future of computing. And boy, did that checkmate move pay off. By giving Android away to phone makers for free, Google guaranteed that its own services, Search, Maps, Gmail, YouTube, would be the default on most of the world's phones. Today, Android runs on over 70% of all smartphones on the planet. Google didn't just build a few apps for the mobile revolution, they owned the entire stadium it was being played in. But here's the thing. When you get that big, when you become woven into the very fabric of society, you start to run into a whole new class of problems. The scrappy little company that was founded on this optimistic, simple principle was about to run headfirst into the messy reality of its own incredible power. This was Google's famous informal motto. They actually wrote it into their paperwork when they went public. It was this promise to the world and to themselves that they would always put users first and never exploit them. A really noble idea. But yeah, reality is always way more complicated. In the US, they're facing landmarked antitrust cases accusing them of illegally protecting their monopoly in search. Over in Europe, they've been slammed with billions in fines for abusing Android's dominance. They're under constant fire for collecting just this massive trove of our personal data. And now they're facing maybe their biggest threat ever, the rise of AI, a technology their own scientists helped create. And this is just one of the great ironies of this whole story. The core technology that powers ChatGPT and all these new AI models, it's called the transformer, and it was invented by researchers at Google back in 2017. So you have to ask the question, in its mission to advance knowledge, did Google accidentally create the one thing that could one day make it obsolete? Now, despite all these massive challenges, it is just impossible to overstate Google's impact. The world before Google and the world after Google are two completely different realities. Their legacy is built on a scale that is honestly hard to even wrap your head around. Just think about this number for a second. Every single day, humanity asks Google 8.5 billion questions. It's become our external hard drive for our collective memory, our curiosity, our everything. So when you boil it all down, Google's legacy really comes down to two gigantic achievements. First, the true democratization of information. For the first time in history, a kid in a rural village has access to the same library of knowledge as a professor at Harvard. And second, they basically invented the economic engine of the modern internet, this idea of amazing free services all paid for by targeted ads. And that brings the whole story full circle. From a little project nobody would even pay $1 million for, to a $2 trillion global utility. From a tool built to help a couple of students finish their PhDs, to the very infrastructure our entire species now uses to find answers. And so that leaves us with one final massive question. Their original mission was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And by any measure you can think of, they have succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. So what happens next? What are the responsibilities? What are the dangers? And what are the possibilities when one single company actually accomplishes a mission that profound?